everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we are thrilled to bring back to the show the koala bear of comics, our favorite Aussie, David Hazan, the writer of Nottingham from Mad Cave Studios. David's going to be talking about the collected edition now that the series has reached its end and a bunch of other stuff. So, David, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's nice to have you.
It's
It's nice to be had.
Steve, what am I getting?
Bad. It's a.
Yeah. All right. So, how are you guys doing? Generally, it's been a busy week
we're
here.
We're in like month 3, I want to say, of lockdown. Well, I am through a complicated series of events, having moved interstate rather, and yeah, I'm now on month 3 of lockdown, which is lovely. But it gives you time to write and read comics, which is nice. But also it sends your creativity to the place of Never Never, and you have to, really struggle to search for it. If you're not too busy, like climbing the walls of your now 2-bedroom apartment.
And Steve, how have you been doing?
Oh, I've been doing pretty good. It has been a wild week. Even though it was a short week for me, I am off. So starting Friday, I'm off because I am heading up for a wedding, which is probably the largest event that I've been to in 2 years at this point. It's not going to be a giant wedding or anything like that, and everybody is vaccinated. But it's still it'd be very interesting. But that's up in Connecticut, so I get to see New England, and maybe the colors are changing. I don't know. Because down here in North Carolina, they are not yet. So.
Yeah, we were supposed to go to a wedding in July, and someone got nervous, so
totally,
we ended up not going.
Reasonable.
Yeah,
it is reasonable. I'm sad that actually a couple of friends...
I was cool, but we also were like kind of in that living in a dream for a couple of weeks, where
we're Delta.
I'm in a store with a mask.
I remember
and other
that.
people are, yeah. Well,
we had months of living the dream, and then
Yeah, well, over here, I don't even want to even consider what the perception of America is with the vaccine hesitancy. It's just so strange.
Look, it's everywhere, the hesitancy, and that scares me.
Yeah,
it's not the fact that it's not just the States. That's what scares me.
Yeah.
Although one thing that we've seen in some other places is not as prevalent, but I think it just depends on how how mistrustful regular people are of the government and everything that's related to the government, i.e. health departments, or where internet misinformation is like the biggest pastime that everybody has. So places where you expect, like Russia, has a relatively low vaccination rate, compared to the fact that they've actually had a vaccine since the third quarter of last year. But it's still, uptake is still really slow, which is unfortunate because most people just don't trust it.
Yeah. And the worst thing is that looking at the numbers, places like Singapore and Israel are saying, well, really, if you want to beat Delta, you need to have like a 90% vaccination rate, which is almost impossible given like people who actually can't take the vaccine and also the hesitancy. So yeah, it's pretty scary that we're probably stuck with this thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's think of better things. Let's think of happier things.
Well, I've got a good thing to be happy and grateful about. It's Tony Gilkinson is
Tony. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Hey, Tony, thank you for joining. But yeah, I mean, there's other things to be grateful for. Shang-Chi came out here in the U.S. And it was wonderful.
La 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 la.
Yeah, so
we're not going to spoil it today.
So.
Maybe next weekend. Maybe. I'm still, operating. I am very hesitant now to put my health at risk for a film. I'm very hesitant to do that. And when I was looking at some of the screenings, they were still a bit more pre-sold than I would have hoped.
Maybe.
So we'll see.
I mean,
We'll see. Maybe
and
next
actually,
week. I
I
actually
saw it.
would rather, given the window where it would be appearing on Disney Plus, I actually may throw that card in towards the Eyes of Tammy Faye over
Ooh.
Shang-Chi, just because the availability for that won't be the same. So we'll see.
Isn't that like October, mid-October? They're doing the release on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's 45 days from the
Yeah.
from the release. So
Okay, good. That's
Tony Gilkins.
realistic.
it's a film of my people. Okay,
It's the film of my people. There you go. Thanks, Tony. No.
All right, well, let's get to some geeky gets. It's always a nice way to start things off. I'll go first because I always go last when we're doing the round tables and everything. First, I wanted to show this to Steve. This is the most inexpensive one. We now have a new Happy Meal promotion at McDonald's, and it is celebrating the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. And my favorite Walt Disney film is Lady and the Tramp. And first go around, I got Tramp. And there's, I think, 50 of these figures.
Jesus.
Yeah. So.
And I'm sure most stores only have like a couple of each, if they only.
Yeah, but
that's so strange to me that McDonald's toys are a collector's item. Like present day McDonald's toys are being marketed as collector's items. That's strange to me. I don't know if they do that here. I feel like they probably don't, but.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I barely.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Notice. Well, I barely recognize or notice that they have Happy Meal toys or what the promotion is, because I don't go to McDonald's very often, but also I don't watch commercials. My TV watching habits have completely eliminated any kind of commercial, so I don't know. I don't know if they even advertise anymore Happy Meal stuff. They used to 20, 30 years ago.
It's network television.
What is this? Over the air.
What is this?
You two shut your mouth. Shut your mouths, both of you. Also been doing the trivia contests and auctions from Dr. Wonders. And last night I got a copy, and it's a beautiful, probably like an 8.5, 9.0 of Teen Titans number 22. And this is the origin story of Donna Troy Wonder Girl. And on top of it, now that I have this, I only need one more issue, and I have the entire original series run. I need number 7.
Very
Everything else I have, yep. And then some of the past shows I've highlighted, things I've gotten. You have this as well, Steve, from Hamilton Books, which is a pretty cool, closeout seller of books and DVDs. And I got a whole stack of DVDs here and Blu-rays. Some aren't so geeky. Will Rogers Collection Volume 2.
So geeky.
Yeah, but it's a geeky of a difference. I also got number 1 a while ago. So, American humorist from the 20s and 30s who died in a plane crash. Got A Football Life's first season, the NFL biography series. I'm sure that is very sought after by other people watching the show. But 2 that are directly related to comic books. I did get a physical copy of The Image Revolution, which was the documentary that's it's on like almost every site right now, between Amazon Prime and Tubi, and but this does have extended interviews. And it covers the formation.
Pants a lot.
No, just pouches.
Yeah, no,
and too many guns.
But in all honesty, though, when they do get to the breakup, when for the soft breakup when Lee and Liefeld went back to Marvel to do Heroes Reborn, and then the real breakup with Liefeld when he actually, his interest as a partner was dissolved. It's some pretty powerful moments in the documentary. So, Image Revolution, and I, when I can upgrade on the cheap, I will. So I got a Blu-ray of the complete Watchmen comic and also the animated Tales of the Black Freighter to Blu-ray. And I love this with the Blu-ray sets that are like this, which you see in supermarkets and shit. You always worry that the disc is going to be like all three films on one, like highly compressed. It's actually two different discs. So happy about that. So that's a DVD to Blu-ray upgrade.
Oh.
Not
bad.
All right. What about you, Steve?
Well, because I'm going to be driving, I have a 12-hour drive to get up to Connecticut tomorrow. I decided to pop by and pick up a couple things at the store on the way, and I went to the Walmart. But anyway, while I was there, I just kind of checked out their sort of specialty nerdy section. So they have a little section sort of near the checkouts that used to be where you could get the giant size DC comics that they had exclusive to Walmart for a while. Those are all gone. They don't have that anymore, but they do have the 4-pack DC comics. And now for Halloween, they have masks. So you can get a 4-pack with like a big pop out mask of the Joker or Catwoman or Batman, and get your 4 comics that are actually relatively recent. And given the price on them, I think you basically save 50% off the cover price.
Not as steep as that, but it's still considerable. You're getting about probably $16 worth of comics for $10.
Yeah, and you also get a poster, a mini poster, interlocking mini poster, or now the mask that you can get for that price. So not so bad for comics that are between 6 months and a year old. So not so bad. But I could not resist, and I had to pick up these little toy things. They are Rads Twists. With a Z. Rads Twists.
Oh, what are those? I haven't seen those yet.
I don't know. So it's a little candy thing. I haven't opened these, so we'll have to see what it looks like. I got 2. And so it comes with a little packet of probably tasteless candy. But it also comes with a little it's a little canister thing.
So you can put your candy in.
And it just kind of like you twist it and it pops out or whatever. There's like a little thing on the bottom. I haven't really played with it too much, but yeah, so I got a Harley Quinn, and let's see what the other one is.
It's an unboxing video.
Ooh. And this one, I got a Green Lantern. I got a Hal Jordan.
Oh, cool.
So
that's cute.
So yeah, there we go. And they're only $1, which is actually a pretty good deal if you want to collect little heads of things. But there's an entire in this particular series. There's looks like there's about 8 different options, 7 or 8 different options, one of them being a mystery, so that'd be like the special one. And apparently Rads comes out with you get a little poster with your little character, and there's a whole bunch of like other little things that Rads puts out, little cube versions, little mini me heads with feet, keychains, things like that. So kind of it's cute. For $1, that's not bad. The candy probably tastes like garbage, but whatever. I got it for the heads. So
what you're saying is, Steve, you're a mock.
Yes, yes, I am.
You're an end cap mark
for this. Yes. So yeah, excellent.
All
so
right,
that's
cool.
me. That's all the cool stuff that I got.
Yeah. And David, you came walking in with something pretty cool.
Yes,
so
I may have overdosed on the Star Wars Lego helmets. Because I decided that all of my nerd memorabilia is stuck up at my parents' place in Sydney, so I just bought more.
Perfectly reasonable.
So now my lounge room under my TV has a whole bunch of Star Wars helmets. The Boba Fett is probably the coolest one. The TIE Fighter pilot, surprisingly, is a really, really cool one as well. The Darth Vader was a little disappointing, but the other ones have been pretty cool.
Oh, that's pretty neat. Now, do you actually have to assemble them, or do they come already assembled?
Oh no, you build them. You got to build it. That's part of the fun.
Of course.
And like these are pretty intricate and interesting builds. Lego people love new techniques, and these are like this is full of like new building techniques. For all of you Lego nerds out there, it's really interesting to build these, and it's really fun.
Nice.
Just advertising, just free advertising for the Lego group, honestly.
So I'm a Mark and you're a shill. I see how this works.
That's about right. As you can see, I am wearing the shirt of shameless self-promotion. So
Okay, so let's get to it. Tell us about wrapping this up and everything that's going on.
I mean, we haven't wrapped it up. I am still writing Nottingham scripts, which is fun. So the first trade is out now. We've been pushed back to October 6th, I believe. And that collects issues 1 to 5 because people loved it so much. We're getting to do a volume 2, and I'm sort of deep in the tank on that now. The art's coming back for the first couple of issues, and it's wonderful. And Shane's also our lovely artist Shane Connery Volk has really stepped up his game to a point where I'm like, I have to really like write to keep up with this and to match. But for anybody who didn't see or hear the original Nottingham episode, the book is takes the Robin Hood legend and turns it on its head. Our protagonist is the Sheriff of Nottingham, who in our tale is kind of a medieval detective, and he's hunting down a serial killer who's been murdering the area's tax collectors. And that's where our tale begins. And it winds through some twists and turns, and hopefully we get to surprise whoever decides to read this with those twists and turns and our unique takes on each of the characters in the legends. Yeah.
Elevator pitch.
I've been doing it a lot these days.
Well, I know Bill and myself, we've read and have all 5 of the floppy, the single issues when they were coming out. Pick those up every month, which was just really great. And one of the things that I loved about this series and the reception of the series is that the sales allowed for multiple printings on most of the issues. I think every issue was able to get at least a second printing.
So
I know
issue 5 didn't get a second printing, but that was because by the time we got to issue 5, the order amounts were very much known, so it was planned for. But the first issue went to 5 printings, the second went to 4, third went to 3, and the fourth went to 2, which is like astounding for a first book from two new creators from a smaller publisher. It just phenomenal. Like I could not have anticipated how well this would have been received, and I'm very thrilled about that.
As are we. We are also equally thrilled about it. Well, maybe not equally. I mean, obviously, this is really awesome for you, and I'm sure opened a lot of doors. And we're just really excited to see the next volume of Nottingham whenever that is ready to come out. Which hurry up on it.
I'm keeping pace with the art, which is good. But
well, and being in lockdown, I guess that kind of helps because now you've got all this time.
But the creativity, is somewhere other than in my brain, and sometimes takes a while to go searching for it. But yeah, I've had the ideas for the second arc in my head for quite a while, since I finished writing volume 1 in March of 2020, I want to say. So it's been a year and a half since then, and the story, the threads just keep kind of pulling out as I. So there is, a lot more Nottingham if people, keep buying the second volume when that comes out. I assume it's next year. I don't know when next year, but given the pace that we're going for on the art, it's almost without a doubt going to be next year.
Will the volume 2 also be 5 issues?
Yes, so it's going to be 5 issues in volume 2.
That's good.
Although I'm looking at it going, God, I wish I'd asked for 6 sometimes. You get to that point, you're like, oh boy.
Save that for volume 3.
No comment. I'd love to do volume 3. So please, anybody who's listening, keep buying the book, buy the trade. Yeah, just throw money at Mad Cave, please.
Money, other favors. It's all good. We have a comment here from a gentleman. I don't know if we're familiar with him. Caleb Alexander McKinsey. He seems kind of somebody that we may know.
I've heard he's a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Well,
Let it go.
Caleb has mentioned, congrats on the success of the book. Here's to the next chapter, clinking beer mugs. Thank you so much for popping in, Caleb. And
yes, thank you, Caleb.
I mean,
kidding.
We love you and we miss you, and law school is too much reading. It should be less work.
Well, I don't know what the edict is over in Australia, but in the States, David, the adage is in the first year they work you to death, the second year they scare you to death, and the third year they bore you to death. I don't know if that was your experience too. In terms of curriculum.
I mean, law school is slightly different over here, depending, because you can do it undergrad here. Which usually means you're doing another degree as well. So it takes place over 5 years, but suffice it to say that I think probably the second year is where they work you to death, and by year 5, yeah, they're definitely boring you to death.
Just read these, memorize these, and
yeah. Look, I was like my final semester, I was working full time and also had a full-time class load, so it was really a lot, but it wasn't so much boring. It was overwhelming, but we did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. And for me, I was I worked a full-time job and was 4 years on the night track, and a big gap between undergrad and the start of law school. It kind of amazes me that I did it, because I think I was just at the last few years where that was just physically possible to do it. But yeah, like you said, we did it. So apart from Nottingham, do we have anything else on the horizon?
We do have things, nothing I can mention by name, but I'm working with some lovely publishers whom you're all familiar with. Steve knows a lot about this, but I haven't really said anything more about it publicly yet. And in the next 6 months, hopefully we should get some announcements, and I'll be able to talk about it. The one thing that I know is coming, because I've seen all of the art, is I got a little story. I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I got a little story in an anthology from an Australian publisher called Gestalt. Really lovely people. They were the home of Tom Taylor's The Deep for a while. And I got a lovely, very queer 8-pager in a sci-fi anthology coming from them at some point in the next, hopefully, 12 months. So excited for that, because that was really fun to do, and the art looks lovely. But yeah, apart from that, I'm working on 3 other books at the moment that I can't talk about, but they exist.
Can you give us some clues through interpretive dance?
I don't know about interpretive dance. That should stay on TikTok, and I don't have a TikTok for that reason. But all 3 of the books that I'm working on are to some extent intensely queer, because Nottingham, I guess, I don't have a lot of space to explore those themes in that book, and so yeah, so they're on scales of mildly to intensely queer, the other 3 books that I'm currently working on with publishers.
Yay!
Okay, cool.
Which is wonderful. So I'm really excited for all the stuff that you can't talk about. That we can't summarize. And
Me too, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How has your with this though? How has your abilities as pitching stories? Has that gotten better the more you've done it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that go on with that sort of stuff. It's pitching the right thing at the right time. It's you could pitch the best genre story, but it could be that everybody else is pitching that genre, and it just it's so much of it is not in the art of the pitching, but in the timing of it, that I don't know that there's necessarily that much skill involved when it comes down to it. Like, to a certain point, you have to have a competent pitch, but that's maybe 20% of the process. 80% of it is either finding an editor who will champion the hell out of it, or being in the right place at the right time, and pitching the right concept to the right publisher, because sometimes the problem isn't the concept, it's where you're directing it. This is all very strange inside baseball from inside my head, but yeah, it's a lot about circumstances, and I'm sure I could write like a whole essay on pitching comics, but yeah, suffice it to say, it's more about the networking side of the business than it is necessarily about the competency of the pitch. Once you get to a certain level with that, it's all the same, because you're competing against people who are equally as competent as you, and it's all about being in the right place at the right time with the right people.
And the right story, I guess. Yeah. And also just, it's like, hey, this is what we're looking for.
I don't know if it was ever recorded, but I went to a panel with Brian K. Vaughan, and he had gone over in the panel just what you had said, David, about with the gestation of Saga, that there were opportunities where if he had taken them, he didn't think that it would have been as successful because it would have been buried with a bunch of other books.
Absolutely.
That there was another time that the time didn't align with what Fiona had on her plate, and that he really feels that if it had been his literal line was that if it started 6 months earlier or 6 months later, we might have been talking about a very different book or a very different reception.
Absolutely, that, and I've had those kind of experiences as well, because artists, their time is much more valuable than the writer's time, and they drop out for whatever reason, or things just don't quite align, and that's disappointing, but it's part of the business. And I guess the comparator really is when you're the Brian K. Vaughan, you have the opportunity to I guess take that step back and wait for the right moment. But sometimes when newer creators, sort of who are coming up at my level and sort of behind me, sometimes when you get the yes, you just got to take the yes and get the runs on the board. That's part of it. But also, on the other hand, I'm me being super diplomatic about this. To quote a friend of mine, who is a fantastically more talented writer than I am, the lovely Christoph Burgach, he said to me, "The ideas that you don't put forward and you don't move forward on are as important as the ones that you do." and knowing when to step back from something and put it on the shelf is one of the most important things in this business. And I agree to a certain extent. It part of that has to do with where you are in your career, and if you need the runs on the board, you just need the runs on the board. But sometimes it's about taking a step back and saying this is not the right time for this thing, and coming back to it or not coming back to it.
No, that's actually a really good insight into that, because a lot of people who are new to the business who are really excited to like put everything that they have out there. There's a lot of chance for for disappointment, and you don't want an idea that you love so much to bring you that much sadness sometimes.
I have a case in point analogy, which is I don't know if you guys are aware of what's going on with Action Lab at the moment. But a lot of newer creators have gotten their books buried, as Action Lab seems to be going through some sort of financial trouble.
We have friends.
Not really clear.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say that there has been somewhat of a creator revolt, but I've had a lot of friends who've gone with them, and a lot of friends who've seen the structure of those contracts and said no for very good reasons. And time has proven them to be right, I think. But yeah, some of that choosing not to move forward with things also relates directly to the creator-publisher relationship. And yeah, make sure you read through your contracts before you sign anything. The following does not constitute legal advice, but read things and understand them.
That is good suggestion and recommendation for any field, anything that you do that you are putting yourself out there for. I totally agree with that. Oh, wow. Oh, we do have another comment here from Caleb, kind of referring back to law school. I'd like to have words in an alley with whomever said third year law was going to be boring because they're trying to kill me. Or
pay a lawyer.
Or pay a lawyer for legal advice as well. Yes.
That is absolutely true. But I think this is sort of my comics creator brain coming at it, which is that not a lot of creators have that money to spare, and which is why Action Lab's response was so disappointing, which is holding their IP hostage effectively for amounts of money which they know those creators cannot afford. I'm not sure necessarily what the strategic reasoning is behind that, but I have my suspicions, so we will see.
I mean, especially in the comics world, publishers, even more now than I think ever, really do depend on the goodwill of the readers, of the consumers of the comics. I mean, if you have a publisher that's not on the up and up with their creators, and it becomes very well known, I mean,
at least in the independent world.
In the independent world. I mean, with DC and Marvel, though, I mean,
it's a little different there, but still, there are cases to be made where that dynamic is in place, Steve.
And to give people some insight into, I guess, the financial aspects of this, specifically for newer creators. If you are going with a publisher in that tier for creator-owned work, there is a 90% chance that you are funding the entire book yourself. Publishers in that tier do not pay advances. And so you either need to find an artist who's willing to work on spec, or have an arrangement with them in order to work that out. And usually that means paying a page rate as an advance, or just simply paying a page rate, or somehow splitting the IP in a different way and paying a some form of a page rate. Usually, those are the options when dealing with artists and working with publishers in that tier, and that's fine if you're new, but it's also hard financially for a lot of people. And publishers who pay advances have my respect. Publishers who pay page rates as advances have my infinite respect. And I'm working with one of those publishers now, and it's really lovely to have that experience. So and you can see that publishers like that will keep attracting great creators, and it's just the ones who take care of their creators will keep bringing them back for more fantastic books. That's all I can say on that.
And attracting also, other talented people that want to work with them as well.
Absolutely.
That when you have a publisher with a good reputation, it's not hard to find somebody who's willing to work with them. But well, and again, it's tough. Like for smaller tier publishers too, it can be kind of difficult because financially they can't pay everything in advance, but what they can bring to it is the ability to publish, the connections with the direct market, and the advertising, and getting the
more
book
and
out
more,
there.
More and more these, I guess, smaller publishing houses have become farms for IP, which is in some ways great news for the creators, and in other ways it's kind of very daunting, and it changes the kind of books that they do and don't publish. So it's sort of a swings and roundabouts situation where, like, you would love for your book to get pushed into Hollywood in some way, but also it changes the nature of the beast in terms of what does and doesn't get published. And on Twitter I see a lot of I guess disdain directed towards comics that are sort of failed movie pitches, and there's a right way to go about this and a wrong way to go about that sort of thing. And I think you need to realize that comics are comics, even if it's coming from an idea that was from another medium.
And in all honesty, sometimes you can smell it a mile away too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
When you hit, I mean, there was a window when one particular publisher was, basically like every third title they were publishing, just had the stench of a failed TV pilot on almost every one of their books. One was really good. And there's, and I don't think you can. I think there is a danger when a publisher is set up that way. You're kind of doomed to failure. I always think of Radical, which I guess the biggest project they were associated with was The Last Days of American Crime. That was just blatant about what their intentions were. And if you're a publisher, be in publishing. That there's a way to accomplish many different goals. I think some of the things that Dark Horse are doing right now, and Dark Horse may not be the best example because they do have a pretty stringent right of first refusal in terms of stuff they publish right now, and that's been in place for a while. But
they have some deal with Netflix, I think.
Grendel is going to be the first one that's produced that way. But we're saying that, but Matt Wagner's he's an EP, so that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I've noticed with publishers these days is they've seen the success of those properties where the creators have been involved in the process, and how it actually leads to a more successful production down the line, and they can see that, and they make moves to facilitate that. for instance, I've had chats with a couple of publishers where they're like, they will tell you up front, they will not sign on for any multimedia deals that, if you say you want EP credit or you want a seat in the writer's room, they won't sign on for anything less than that, which is wonderful. And I think that creator focus, I hopefully it broadens, because it we can see from something like Action Lab that it's not necessarily spread throughout the entire publishing community in comics, but I really hope that people really cotton on to this making for success down the line, and put that into action, because I think it's a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I've mentioned the Grendel thing, and you just have to understand, David, that there's a parallel universe where Matt Wagner and I have been in a beautifully committed and wonderful 32-year relationship, and I hope that Bill Zanowitz of Earth Whatever is very happy. I really do.
Why, yes.
Yeah. So you want to go talk some comics?
We all have those alternate world fantasies, don't we?
Well, yeah.
Oh. So, do you want to talk some comics?
Yeah, let's talk comics.
We can talk some comics.
Right. Cool. All right, Steve, you got the mic. Let's see what's something you're reading that you're digging.
I get the mic.
Yes.
So, what I've been doing this whole summer, this has been the summer of like queer trade comics that I've been, I've been picking up. Not queer,
am I a bad queer that like I just don't even care if that's the content or not? All right.
Yes. Terrible.
I did pick up Killer Queens. I did pick up that.
Yes.
I did pick up some stuff, but it just I don't know. I'm going through a phase where I just want escapism, and this has been this way since the pandemic. I know that some people have retreated into very slice of life oriented, and for me, the more cosmic it is, the better right now. I don't know.
There is a universe in which in around 12 months' time we have this discussion again, and with things that I can talk about, and I'd love to get into this idea of like comparing what queer comics are now to what they used to be to what they could be in the future. But I think that we should pocket that one for a year's time.
It just seems like every time that we're going through that, and there are books that I've been engaged in the conversation. Certainly, I Never Promised You a Rose Garden and many others. But it just seems to me like right now that I'm not looking for that as the criteria for interest in a book right now. And I think I'm a bad queer. I do.
No, you're not. No, I mean we all have phases of what we're really going for in terms of.
I got a football life. Yeah.
You're in a football kind of mood, and they just don't happen to be.
Like,
he's in a football kind of mood.
How is that cosmic though? Explain. And you can't answer with thirst. That doesn't count.
I think with sports, there's always this heroic projection. I think there is an element of that. Sports fans are the biggest nerds you're ever going to come across.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt, they got nothing on it. Let me tell you, my friend Nick, who puts his fists through walls when the Packers lose, I wouldn't do that if Batman left the JLA. Like what? Come on, I don't get that.
Did you do that when Batman left the JLA?
No, never. No. The only
it happened.
I cannot see like having like visceral reactions like that. Comics have moved me, and I've been upset about developments. I've been upset when certain writers got onto certain titles I love. That's another kind of cosmic disappointment. But no, I don't think I've ever. I don't want to bring the name of somebody up, but I know there's somebody we all know who is like intensely negative about certain things in comics. And like if there's something he doesn't like, he lets you know, and he lets you know whether you care about it one bit or not. And I just never been that way because it's we don't have control of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
like you find like here's me like platitudes, but like you find the things you do like in comics, or else you become the gross, hateful people whose names we shall not mention. But
Mhm.
because if you hold on to that stuff, like I just don't understand you living in a parallel universe where you think you can change uh, the course of the creation of a book. And there are also people who are working hard, even though it may not be something that necessarily you enjoy. They're still like working hard to make comics, and that is an achievement in and of
yeah,
itself.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
To get
you know,
anything there on the shelf, it takes a
yeah.
yeah.
long
And
time. A
nobody is
lot of
trying
effort.
to make a bad comic.
No.
No one sets forth to record a dud album or a shit movie. Nobody,
No.
the levels of talent are always going to be at varying degrees, but nobody sets out to do it. And if
Yeah.
they do that, they're a particular kind of damaged.
What did
So,
Adam Sandler say, that if he didn't get the Oscar for Uncut Gems, he was gonna make the worst movie of all time? Did he actually say that?
Well, I mean, hasn't he already though? Hey, it is a pretty. I have to
Several
say, it's an
times,
extremely
maybe, but
high bar to make the worst movie. It really is, because there's been a lot of really bad,
yeah,
some intentionally so, that
yeah.
aren't as bad as the unintentionally bad movies.
My
yeah, and
worst
then
movie of all time is a comic book film, for the record.
ooh,
I want people to
Which
know that.
one?
Howard the
Which one?
Duck. Howard the Duck is the worst film ever made. Point
I
for
don't know if I
point.
agree.
Oh God.
I have not seen
I
it.
tried again. Um, I have it over there, around the corner there, because I have everything. And oh my God, I lasted 10 minutes. I can't get through it. For me, that's literally the worst film ever made. There's
Interesting.
nothing redeeming about that film.
Hmm.
Nothing.
Hmm.
Ugh.
How did you feel about the appearance? Well, I should probably ask if you've seen What If first, but
I've seen them all apart from the Killmonger that came out
okay,
yesterday. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What? How did you feel about the
It
appearance?
was fine. Fine.
Seth Green
I'm not,
now.
I'm not opposed to the nature of Howard the Duck at all. No, seriously. I mean, it was very potent 70s satire. There was a
Huh.
lot of good stuff in that original thing. There's not an ounce of that in the film. Why are we talking about Howard
Yeah.
the Duck? Let's talk
Well,
about some
no, the film.
let's go talk about some
I
comic
don't know
books.
how we got here.
Yeah,
It's how it
it
works.
goes
It's
the
how
way
it works.
our
it's just how
our
it
So,
Lady of
happens.
Sacred Tangents.
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
We praise thee, and then we talk about something else.
Tell us about your queer
So,
comic there, Steve.
well, like I said, I've been reading a lot of queer trade books. Graphic novels, original, autobiographical kinds of work. And the latest one that I picked up is The Contradictions by Sophie Yano. And this one, this is the version put out by Drawn and Quarterly. This actually is an Eisner Award winning storyline. Originally, it was published in parts as a web comic, and won an Eisner. Sophie won an Eisner for it, and so then it was collected, expanded upon, and published as a full book. And essentially, the quick, long and short of it is Sophie is writing about her own experience of a sort, living and going to school in Paris as a California American student in undergrad. And during the course of her, pretty much her first semester there, she ends up meeting an interesting anarchist who's more of the revolutionary anarchist type, the do crime, continue to do crime until society crumbles into pieces, because that's all the society is good for. And they hit it off pretty well. Sophie, of course, is kind of in that university college girl or college boy mode where there's a lot of new ideas that they're being exposed to, and they really want to be passionate about those ideas, but are still in that transitional period. And I think, that's one of the things that we don't always talk about when we're that age, that we have passion for these really powerful, things that we want to do in life. But we're actually not really good at it, and we're not really good at understanding what that means. And she's at that phase, being in Paris. So she wants to be a vegan. She wants to be an anarchist. She wants to really live this lifestyle of squatting and hitchhiking and doing all of these things that her parents told her that they did when they were really young and super liberal and everything. And she really wants to experience that. And Xena, who she meets, another American student from New York, she meets in Paris. She decides to kind of be like this person. Unfortunately, Xena is kind of exasperating, and they hit on the idea that they're going to hitchhike from Paris to Amsterdam, and then eventually to Berlin, and then fly back from Berlin on a super cheap flight. So they just hitchhike across. And what's very interesting is that Sophie, the way she does her panel work, is there are a lot of multiple panels where very little happens. And this is actually very, very much a really good description of how her experience in these certain situations is working. Hitchhiking, there are panels upon panels where they're just literally just standing out, doing nothing, getting no's from people who don't want to pick them up. And it's all very, very well illustrated to put too fine a point on it, but it is very well illustrated in that way. Also, how she depicts herself, very awkward and gangly. There's a lot of sort of self-expression that's coming through, in how she draws herself and others. And the story itself is very relatable. Even if you've never hitchhiked around Western Europe as a university student, there's something very understandable about this type of person, and what she's trying to do for herself and what she's trying to make of herself. And if you have an opportunity to pick this up, The Contradictions by put out by Drawn and Quarterly, written and drawn by Sophie Yano. It's wonderful. And interestingly enough, connection to Manny Murphy. Sophie was also had a fellowship at the Comics Center. What is it called? The Center for Cartoon Studies, which is in White River Junction, New Hampshire, that Manny Murphy also studied at. So there's, Sophie here has worked in a lot of different, academic cartooning and comics settings.
Yeah.
So there is.
Uh-oh.
I thought that was me that froze, but
No,
nope.
it looks like it's Steve. Let's see what happens there.
And I seem to.
Yeah,
No, I think
you're frozen
there
like
we go.
Elsa, honey.
Yeah, strong academic
Okay.
background to this, and lots of feeling with this. So I do highly recommend it. Contradictions by Sophie Yano.
Okay, cool. All right, David, how about you? Is there anything you'd like to talk about comic book wise?
Sure. I've been reading, and I'm about halfway through the first trade of Blade Runner Origins. And honestly, I'm only halfway through, and I'm already liking it more than both films, which I loved, especially the second one. But I think this book has a more honest interpretation of not only the sort of cerebral, philosophical kind of ideas that are being played with Blade Runner, but also the underlying socio-political stuff. So it deals heavily with queerness and also with race. And I guess the idea that, in essence, a Blade Runner is effectively a slave catcher, and I think that that's as interesting as talking about what makes us human. And it's a great way to talk about what makes us human by thinking about um, you know why exactly the Blade Runners really trying to catch the replicants. Like what is the deep sort of underlying sociopolitical forces that are pushing these two things together, and it's capitalism. But yeah, I think it's so beautifully and subtly queer, and it's got more representation than either film in terms of people of color as well. And I just like, it's twisty, it's actiony, it's got all of those elements, and it's got those sort of like slow kind of Blade Runnery contemplative sequences, as well as this like predilection for like really quite fast paced action too. um I'm loving the hell out of it so far, and it's written by the lovely Mello Brown, and also let me uh, artist credits, because Kay Perkins and Mike Johnson also written by. It's Michael Green was a creative consultant, and it's got art by Fernando Dagnino, I think. So yeah, it's honestly a blast, and I could not have enjoyed it more. So
Cool. And who's the publisher on that? Is that Titan?
it's Titan, yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
I haven't read any of the Blade Runner comics, but obviously
Me
it kind of had
either.
a little bit of a renaissance recently because of 2049 when that came out. There seemed to be a lot sort of in the build up around the sequel. I saw that, like there were full animation, like animated films that were put out, prequel comics, sequel comics, all sorts of things that were coming out around when 2049 was out in theaters. So,
All right, cool. For my first book, I wanted to talk about something that came out from our friends at Scoot, which is the all ages imprint that's with Scout, and our good friend Rich Rivera is the publisher there. And this is the first issue, and also the only issue, of Action Tank. And Action Tank, as it provides itself, is a fantastic, drastic, intergalactic adventure about getting home for dinner. And it's written and drawn by Australian Mike Barry. And what we have is a young boy here. We don't know his name. He's just referred to as the boy. And one day he wakes up and he's not on Hillcrest Drive. He's on the planet Pluto. And he's in this outfit. And this outfit seems to give him some very special abilities. And he doesn't know why he's there. And he doesn't know what the specific purpose is. But then he comes across Rex. And this is Rex. And Rex is not a unicorn. He's a quadricorn because he has 4 horns. So, which makes perfect sense. And he addresses the boy as Cadet. And the boy gets confused by this, and the reason that he calls him Cadet is because he's been a trainer and he's dressed as a cadet. So why this boy made this journey from Earth to Pluto, we don't know. But this is all the preamble. The art is beautiful. I love this particular style, and let me just, it's just big panels and big action. The first monster he comes across, look at that, with a roar. I mean, just
Wow.
beautiful work, beautiful storytelling. You get through it very quickly. If I took longer than 5 minutes to read this, I took a long time. But when I mentioned preamble and when I mentioned it's going to be the only issue, it's because there is an upcoming Action Tank graphic novel. So this is released in advance of this, and there's no way this isn't an order for me. And it really felt, there's always that, it's written for children, but adults can like it, blah, blah, blah. This really felt like any age can get into it because of how expansive. And, let me show you this section where he's getting used to his abilities on the planet and where he might be going. It's just really, really top-notch storytelling.
That's
Loved
such
it.
an endorsement from you, I feel, since you, I suppose, approach kids' comics with some sort of caution. At least that's my understanding of where you're at with that. But that's an endorsement, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there was one a few weeks ago that didn't
Labamba to
didn't
you.
put just push certain buttons of mine, but uh you know
Yeah.
I think just like with all ages books, just like any books, if they're well done, you recognize it. I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of rap music, but I know what's shit and what isn't. You know, and even if it's a genre or a particular mode of storytelling that you don't necessarily gravitate towards, or if it's not necessary, if you are not necessarily the intended market for, you always recognize quality. And I mean, this felt, first I'm looking through this and I'm thinking, God, that maybe there's like a little bit of an Astro Boy vibe, but that's dispelled, after three page turns. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really, really enjoyed it, and we've been seeing a lot of good books coming out of Scoot
Yeah.
so far. That's been one publisher where, like, with some of it's the price point. They're always a very low price point on the first issue. That helps, but at the
Mhm.
same token, Clearing the Dragons and other stuff that has come out.
Misadventurers.
Yeah, we've been
Yeah.
all over it, and that we
Mhm.
know people there doesn't even factor in.
Yeah.
I know that's the case for me and Steve. Um, so,
Yeah.
and I just, this is when I see that diamond solicit, this is gonna be an automatic checkbox because I loved it so much. Okay,
Awesome.
I'm surprised this seems like up your street, Steve. I thought you would get this.
Well, that's the thing. Like one of the things with me, it just depends on whether I check out the that section in preview. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm like, I need to, uh,
Or like, or if it this is the
try
case
to,
for me. Sometimes if I've hit my budget, for the certain other
yeah.
sections, it just
You just
goes by the
close it.
wayside.
Like I don't get there yet
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I haven't. I'm way too over. But yeah, I mean, like when I do see some Scoot books, like there's usually and sometimes with Scout as well. Like I
Mhm.
will. Immediately, hey, that book sounds like it's an interesting
Yeah.
interesting premise, and I've never been disappointed.
Yep.
So
All right. Cool.
yeah.
All right. Tell us about something else you're reading that you're digging.
So since Brian's not here, and he's usually he's the main go-to when it comes to things like Rorschach and the X books,
I
I'm going to
almost
be
got
talking about
Rorschach.
an X book.
Okay.
Excalibur. I'm going to be talking about Excalibur number 23, which is the most recent issue. And this one was very unique because yes, it refers to a lot of stuff that's been kind of going on, not just in Excalibur, but also overall in the whole Krakoan saga of X-Men. So refers back to the Cross of Swords, massive event crossover, etc. that happened earlier this year. But also some other events from way back in Marvel Comics that even I was kind of like, wait a minute, did that happen? When did that happen? And quick little thing about this: Doctor Doom comes to visit Excalibur at their island, which has now been disconnected from the rest of Great Britain. Great Britain has severed all ties with Krakoa after the Hellfire Gala. And Doctor Doom just sort of shows up and he's like, "Hey guys,
Hello there.
hello there." Well, he does kind of sort of, he comes in very regal, but then also says, "Move aside, peasants. I need to get through your gate to get to Avalon, because the only gateway to Avalon, to the other world, is through Excalibur and on their island." And of course, Excalibur's like, What the hell are you talking about? You're not coming in here and just demanding to walk through this portal. Like, this is a sovereign nation. You're clearly, yes, we're going to be diplomatic to you, but get the hell away, dude. And so, of course, through some finagling, he actually brought a mutant baby that he had, thinking that he could use it to cross through, because only mutants can go through. He's like, I'm going to hold the baby and walk through the gate. It's like, that's not going to work, buddy. It's not going to happen. And makes another thing. Well, it's like, well, I can go ahead and skin some other mutants I have back home, and then we can kind of like wear them as it's just like Dr. Doom, dude. You're going to a really dark place. But Excalibur decides, okay, well, we can't really get rid of him because it's Dr. Doom, and he's kind of that type of guy. Let's escort him into Avalon and see what he needs help with. And he's going there specifically for the castle of Morgana Le Fay. And apparently, and this is kind of outside of my immediate knowledge, I was like, when did this happen? He and Morgana were a bit of an item for a bit, because obviously Dr. Doom is always interested in magic. Morgana Le Fay is, very interested in magic as well, as part of the Arthurian legend, and also in the Marvel Universe version of her. But apparently they were a couple for a while, and she has disappeared. We don't know where she is, and in fact, when they get to where her castle used to be, it has also disappeared, with a telltale sign that maybe, according to the fairies, they should go check out the Crooked Market, which is one of my favorite inventions of Otherworld, is this Crooked Market, because it's ridiculous, it's funny, there's all sorts of greatness going on, and Marcus Toe, who does the art, if you look in the background a lot of times whenever they're in Otherworld, specifically in the Crooked Market, when he has the opportunity to draw that, which I think he has in a couple other issues, there's always some goofy little things going on in the background that you have to kind of like point out, sort of like a Where's Waldo or an I Spy. And it's a lot of fun. And of course, there's a lot of humor involved in a very serious thing, because Dr. Doom has no sense of humor. And Otherworld is not a place where you can go that make things make sense. So there's a lot of stuff that happens. It's a very exciting, really cool chapter here with Excalibur and Dr. Doom, and kind of has a little bit of a surprising ending. So I think this was just a really great issue. It can be read as a standalone. You don't have to have read a lot of Excalibur before this, or be really too up on what's going on in Krakoa to really enjoy this issue. And it really, Teenie Howard really did a great job of making me feel nostalgic for the original volume of Excalibur that was out in the 80s and 90s that I used to read as a kid. Where they would have these ridiculous adventures, these one-shot issues where they would go to some ridiculous parallel Earth or Otherworld or whatever, and just weirdness would ensue. And it feels good to read that. It's fun, it's nostalgic for me, but it's also, I think, really great for new readers that may not have, read that era of Excalibur and what was going on in Chris Claremont world at the time. But yeah, Excalibur number 23, I totally recommend.
Cool.
Honestly, that sells it for me, because I've never been a huge X-Men person, but you pitching it as like a kind of like an X-Men comedy, but where Doctor Doom is like the straight man in this X-Men comedy, like great, sold.
Yeah, it's like this is not your world, Doctor Doom. I know you think you know it all and you've seen it all, but this is not your. This is totally outside of your realm of experience and knowledge, and you're just bumbling. You are bumbling here. And Excalibur is just a lot of fun. I think the group that they've put together, between Captain Britain, Psylocke, Captain Britain, Megan shows up. You've got Jubilee, of course, and Gambit and Richter. I mean, there's just a fun group of characters here that Teenie can really have. Teenie Howard can have a lot of fun writing, and they really do a really good job playing off of the Doctor Doom foil in this issue, so it works.
All right, cool. All right, David, how about you? Do you have another book?
Yes, I do. I have been reading Clans of Bellari from Aftershock. Here we go.
Yeah, and this I didn't know a thing about until we started talking about it today.
Yeah, it's
So
by Peter Rob Blackie, writing with Daniel Manet on art, Carlos Lopez on colors, and Taylor Esposito on letters. The concept's really interesting. I feel like it's one of those things where, to me, it should just be a graphic novel. Like, I felt like the episodicness kind of lost the tension for me. Like, I understand structurally why it's episodic, but it, to me, I'd rather, this is something I'd rather binge, because it's heavy on politics and I guess light on action, set in this system where humans have populated after leaving Earth. There's a very strict caste system, and in order to like your male lead, in order to save a young orphan girl, has to sort of break out of the mold, and the young girl then grows up and constantly questions the caste system, and shenanigans ensue, and there's the whole like upper level political thing and the personal story. Great stuff.
Oh, it looks like we have lost David.
let's hope to get him back.
He's disappeared. Oh, here we
What
go.
happened there?
There we go.
Oh, there
Great
you go. You're
stuff.
back. Okay, that was quick.
But I just kind of want to see where it ends, and so part of me is just like, I need to read it when it's all there. The art is gorgeous. It's a little different. It's a little on the like, I guess, I don't know how to describe it, but it's less on the like, it's conventional, but not to the point of feeling like cookie cutter superhero stuff. It's more in that like mid tier, like Dynamite book kind of vibe to it. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but that's what I feel about it. And yeah, the colors are gorgeous as well, so gives some like really vibrant stuff to this, I guess, new sci-fi world.
I'm glad that you talked about it, because I've been curious about it. It's been advertised pretty heavily in other comics by the publisher, and I've seen it on the shelf, and I really did want to pick it up, but it struck me, and you've kind of confirmed it, as the kind of thing you want to read all together. So either in trade or just wait until every issue comes out so that you can get it all in one go. That sounds, it definitely sounds like something I really would have interest in, but definitely not the patience to wait month to month for.
I'm finding in lockdown, like, that patience has completely disappeared. I'm just like, wait for the trade. Whereas before I was like, when I could go to a comic shop, I would go. But now I'm just like, I can wait.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good.
That's a good segue to mine, because I actually went to a comic book shop for the next book I'm going to talk about. I did.
Yeah.
I normally get my books through a particular mail service, and Steve and I both peeked in on the live stream of another podcast last night, talking about our friends over at A Comic Book Look, and I was surprised that neither John or Tom picked up this book. I was very surprised at that.
Interesting.
But I did. And I've picked up naturally all 3 issues that have come out so far. And I'm going to be talking about Superman and the Authority, which has been commented upon as Grant Morrison's farewell to the DC Universe for now. See how that sticks.
Sweet.
But Superman and the Authority, I am surprised there is no Black Label trade dress on this, because the Superman, as you can see here, maybe if you tilt a little bit, it's a little better there, you can see he's a bit older than what we've been used to, and I don't know if this possibly originally tied into 5G, and the was eventually reworked as Future State. But it is an older Superman, which certainly would be in keeping with some of the things we saw in Future State. And what's interesting is this is going to be a standalone series, yet there is going to be Superman leading a version of the Authority in the regular DCU narrative. It's a little strange how this is working out, but anyway, for what's encapsulated here in the 3 issues. And David, I understand you read the first issue.
I read the first one and I loved it, but it's okay.
It's
Spoil
okay to.
away. I don't.
Okay,
Yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
So I'll be judicious about it. So you see here, you have Superman surrounded by certain other heroes. The first issue is really dominated by like one conversation between Superman and the individual that he is going to be putting this new team together of proactive heroes, and that's Manchester Black. And if you know your history, Manchester Black led the Elite, which was an analog of the Wildstorm Authority. With he's effectively like a gender swapped and really distasteful version of Jenny Sparks, and and he engages Manchester Black partially because of his abilities, but partially because he thinks he's a good person to figure into the scheme of what he wants to achieve with this particular new team. Again, this is an older Superman. He's a few years down the road. It doesn't appear that the Justice League is active at this point. It's a little confusing from some of the dialogue there. The principal artist is Michael Janin. But a lot of other people get their fingers in the pie, particularly starting in the second issue, where you do have different spotlights of different characters. Second issue, we have Apollo and Midnighter. Since Apollo is a Superman analog, it's pretty cool seeing Apollo, basically fanboying on being asked by Superman to join a team. We also have, as you can see here, the Natasha Irons version of Steel, and she is a direct recruit from Metropolis, and naturally somebody that Superman trusts implicitly. And we also have the introduction of the Enchantress, and that narrative moves into issue 3, which was not pre-ordered, which was why I ended up going to a comic book shop. And effectively, they rescue the Enchantress and June Moon from hell. And throughout the rest of this, we also have the realization that one of the antagonists in the story is the Ultra Humanite, which is, if you know your history, because Grant Morrison always throws this stuff in, was Superman's actual first superpowered villain, dating back to 1939. So we leave that there. We have a new version of Light Ray, who is the child of an Earthling and the new god Light Ray. We don't have an appearance yet, though she has been covered. Though she has made cover appearances of a female version of OMAC. But I just love the way that that Morrison is pulling things out from various different aspects of the DC universe and somehow mixing them up and making a cohesive whole. And I'm surprised that the brevity of the series is only 4 issues. It seems for a satisfying conclusion. They got a lot to cover in that issue 4, but he's done it before with the short-term series like We 3 was 3 issues.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So he certainly knows his way around page count, and I'm also interested to see when we do get to the Authority that is in the DC universe proper, how that plays out, because from all the indications, it's basically going to be the same team, just without the aspect of an older Superman. So Superman
I read
and the Authority.
I read the first issue as well, and I do have at least the second issue, and the third issue would be coming eventually. But yeah, I mean it is an intriguing premise, and I am kind of curious how it fits in.
Well, it
yeah,
does.
that was my thought too.
Yeah,
I was like, where does this fit? The first thought is, where does this fit into the continuity? But by the end of the first issue, you're like, I don't really care.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
like just the banter between Superman and Manchester Black sold it for me. Part of me kind of wishes that they'd bring the Supergirl version of Manchester Black into the comics, because I really loved that version. But
Mhm.
I'll leave that for other people to decide.
There's the one thing that I don't appreciate about Manchester Black, and I think it's just because of the type of character he is and how most people tend to write him, is that there is a lot that is dependent on John Constantine existing. There's so much John Constantine that's thrown into Manchester Black that it made sense back before Constantine was part of the proper DC universe, and you had Manchester Black here, kind of being that in a way, but without the magic and without that kind of the main background. But the dialogue that they give to him, and the actions, and even the fact that he wears a trench coat everywhere. I mean, there is something very John Constantine about Manchester Black.
Yeah, and also that the character itself was a parody. I think lends into that, and I think it's happened in the past. Certainly there have been a couple of writers who I think saw Mongol as their opportunity of writing Thanos. So I do see where you're coming from. If the character was used more often, I think there would be some really blatant interpretations that align with what you're talking about, Steve.
I agree in part. I think the characters diverge in interesting ways, which is mostly the fact that, like, I don't think Manchester has the same kind of bravado that Constantine has. Like, Constantine is just masking his insecurities with bravado, whereas I feel like Manchester Black, like, he just doesn't care what people think of him. He's just an asshole.
And he's just and Constantine's an asshole too, but he tries to attempt to not be an asshole, even though he's really bad at attempting not to be an asshole. And then, of course, that always fails at the end. And then he's like, "Sorry, I'm a piece of shit. Oh well, you're gonna go to hell," or whatever. The things that happen to people around Constantine. That Manchester Black is just kind of like, maybe everybody that comes around me is gonna end up blowing up. Whatever, who cares?
But when you guys do tackle the later issues, I mean, the thing that really impressed me the most was the treatment of Enchantress and June Moon, and this exploration of the character, saying, no, you're not really two different people, you're the same person. And that hasn't been explored too often. And also, as you get into the second issue, there's a few reminders there. Yeah, Morrison's a damn good horror writer too. And for me, that arc of the story was the most satisfying, and in some ways the most superhero-y that we've seen so far, which I thought was interesting. So
I think the last time that I've been really impressed by a story with June Moon and Enchantress was the original volume, I think the first 5-6 issues of Justice League Dark, back in the New 52, where she was a major plot point in that first arc, because her aspects were separated, but it was the conjoining of those aspects into the single version that kind of brought her back, brought all June Moon and Enchantress back. So it's interesting. I'm glad that somebody's kind of going back to that, going back to her again, because she is a very interesting, unique character.
I don't think I've read a book with her in it, so that's my
There's
only knowledge of it is my only knowledge of it is that Suicide Squad film, and I don't. You can tell that didn't do it justice, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna dive down that particular well. Before TikTok was cool, apparently.
Probably the most prominent use of her was in the original Ostrander Suicide Squad, where she was a major character for those first 2 years in that book. Running close on time, but maybe we can get real quick another book out. I don't know if you guys are prepared for that.
I can do just a quick
Okay,
I
I
can do a
got
quick
another
boost.
quick one. Yeah.
I can do a quick boost.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that I've really enjoyed this series. It just completed, and that is the Many Deaths of Lila Starr or Layla Starr. It's hard to see. This is the foil cover. I've actually been picking up the foil covers
Mhm.
because they're pretty.
They are
They're
pretty.
very hard to
I've read
see,
the first
but they're
2 issues.
pretty.
Yeah, wow, I love it.
It's
Yeah.
It is this book. It's written by Ram V, and the art is by Felipe Andrade, and I think it's beautiful. I think the story,
Mm.
and I don't want to ruin the end of it because I know David, you've been reading it. I really recommend reading it all all together because it's a really beautiful journey and contemplation about what life means from a character for whom and Layla Starr, not to ruin anything, is death. Is death herself the goddess of death, the Hindu goddess of death, and has basically been banished to Earth as a human because someone has invented eternal life, and therefore her department is no longer necessary, and so she gets reincarnated as a human. Um, and interestingly enough, she continues to die and be reincarnated again as this Layla Starr over and over again, um, in her attempts to stop the person who invented eternal life from inventing eternal life. Either attempting to kill him or to explain to him why it's bad or anything. But this journey that she goes on, and she encounters this person at different stages in their life, and she never changes physically, but emotionally and in her understanding of what life is, as much as this other person in his understanding of what life is and what death is and what that all means. It's just a beautiful tale, and the last issue has a lot of poetry in it, and I can't remember the poet's name, but it has one of my favorite last lines of any comic that I've read.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
This last
I
panel, just a beautiful last line.
Is that going
I
to be
am
collected soon?
Probably Boom usually does a pretty quick
Yeah,
collection
they're
for
usually
the
like
next
a
couple of
like a
months.
2-3 month. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I might
I,
look into
I
that. That
I'm
sounds
like
good.
such a Ram V fan.
Mm.
And like in this book particularly, he just, because there's I guess like a omniscient narration
Mhm.
almost. It just lets his poetic prose loose in the world of comics, and just like masterful. Every time I've read anything of his, um, I get that feeling of like, how do I do this? How could I ever aspire to this? Because yeah, he's so impressive. Have either of you read These Savage Shores? Um,
I
I've
haven't,
only
and I
read the
need to.
DC stuff. I have to admit.
highly recommend These Savage Shores. It's from Vault. Just phenomenal, from the pages with no words to the pages with lots of words. Just some really incredible work.
Yeah.
Highly
Yeah.
recommend.
And I don't know if it was our show or was Southern Fried Geekery, but I do think Caleb covered what the hell was it called? Ruin of Thieves. Do you remember
Mm.
that, Steve?
I can't recall,
And
but it sounds
Caleb, if I'm
familiar, and I think.
ascribing it to you and that's false, I'm sorry, but someone I know had covered Ruin of Thieves. Just want to talk briefly about a Marvel book. I'm not reading too much Marvel these days, but I did pick up and I'm committed to Defenders, which is yet another version of the non-team that's been part of the Marvel universe since 1971, and it's written by Al Ewing, art by Javier Rodriguez. Uh, Art was a little inconsistent, but trying. Certainly, no, seriously, because there's some really cool moments, like here, like look, it's Galactus's mother. Um, so there's some really cool moments, but there's also some things that I don't think were as successful. It takes a lot of it basically like throws all the previous versions of Defenders and into a blender and takes and you can taste certain elements from each of them. We have Doctor Strange and Silver Surfer, who are longtime mainstays. I don't know how this is working into the death of Doctor Strange that's coming up, but I guess it's just a last gap team before he kicks the bucket for a particular period of time. The other characters may not be as familiar. This is Red Harpy, who's the former Red Hulk, Betty Brant. So I don't know what her story arc was, but she's not the Hulk anymore, but she's still Red. This is Masked Raider, and this was the most interesting inclusion because it is a fairly new character, yet it's one of Marvel's oldest characters. This is somebody who has taken the Infinity Mask. There was a Masked Raider who was a Western hero in the first 12 issues of Marvel Mystery Comics way back. This character was introduced in Marvel Comics 1000, and there's other allusions to that book. And there's allusions to Iron Man 2020. There's stuff's all over the place. This character here is Cloud. Have you guys ever heard of him, her? It probably is Marvel's first gender fluid character that dates back to the 80s. I don't think she's appeared since the late 80s. Was very briefly a member of the last incarnation of the Defenders before the mutants went over to X Factor. And they take the trope from the Secret Defenders where Stephen Strange would consult cards and the cards would consult him about putting together who would be the perfect Defenders team for whatever task was ahead from them. And for a nice little diversion, is interesting. Basically, it's another one of those instances where something's wrong with magic, but that's just the MacGuffin to get the team together and get moving. And I don't read a lot of Marvel, but I'm glad when I do hit some books that they hit a fun spot, and this was a lot of fun. So. And it's 5 issues, and I'm committed. So. Defenders.
Yeah, I haven't read a Defenders book since Matt Fraction. His 12 issue.
There hasn't been much, has there? What is
there? I think there was, or maybe I'm thinking.
There was like in The Last Defense, which was Chip Zdarsky, which was one shots.
Yeah. And there was another one that was very. I know
there was The Last Defenders, which was an offshoot of the Initiative, which was one of the teams that was one of the 52 states that Nighthawk put together. It's since the first series, that was by far the longest running. Most of them have only lasted like a handful of issues. But it's nice when they return to them. There's one that's great. Which is where it's Giffen and DeMatteis, and they totally provide that Justice League bwahaha to the Defenders. Namor's like a real dick, and it's a Dormammu story, but they also have Dormammu's sister, and some of her stuff is really fucking funny. So and it must have been collected at some point, and it's like the same as this 5 issues, up and out. But to apply that to a second tier team like they did, with that team doing that, and is Maguire part of that? I'm not sure, but that exists there too. So. Yeah. Oh, I forgot. There was one. It was the street team. But Bendis did the street teams. Yeah. So there was in between Fraction and this. Yeah, they did have a brief run, which mirrored the Netflix team. Yeah.
All right. Right. That's right.
Yeah. So, but like I said, I don't read a lot of Marvel. And
I must read less Marvel than you do, because pretty much unless it's Star Wars, I don't read a whole lot of Marvel.
I am down to. Well, I can't even say I'm reading Avengers. I'm buying Avengers.
If you're not reading it, not enjoying it, do not buy it.
And X-Men until the last issue. I will buy Inferno, Fantastic Four Life Story, and that's about it. That's about it.
One day I'll get the Marvel app and just read a whole bunch. But
yeah, David, that I'm the same thing as like someday I'll do the Marvel Universe where I have, where I know I have, oodles of downtime ahead of me. Probably when I retire, and that's when I'll get to it.
That's when I'll read all these, which are mostly DC.
Do you see my boxes here too?
Well, no,
I got a new
boxes I've read.
I got a new. Those are the boxes you've read.
Yeah,
the
in
piles
the boxes
are what
read,
you have.
Piled on top is what I have not.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And in the brown boxes, those.
Oh, there's plenty of stuff in here I've never read.
That's why I've sworn off buying physical singles. I cannot do it because I would end up like that.
Yeah.
But then I see things like those Layla Star foil covers, and I'm like, oh, I wish I did.
It's like, oh man, and it's, you know what? I didn't go out looking for these, but I think it was either the first or second issue I picked up happened to be the only one that they had on the shelf was the foil cover, and I was like, and it looks pretty, and I've just been picking up ever since because they are pretty.
All right, well, the clock is telling us we have to start wrapping this up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, when you find a fella attractive, you woof at him like this. Woof. How was that?
It's
been ages. It's been ages since I've been woofed at. Ages. Because of lockdown. Yeah. So
in person.
But we do something similar in this context where we shine a spotlight on something which may be a comic book, but it may also be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or in this case, viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your Wolf of the Week?
Well, of course, my Wolf of the Week is TV related. I mean, how can it not be?
It can be. No, I rejoice when it's not TV.
Well, it's gonna be TV this time. So
yes,
I have been enjoying so many wonderful shows that have come out and have come back to screens in the past several weeks. I mean, we've had a lot of return of comic series. But we've also had some new comic related series, and a brand new one just started this week. And it's actually I would say a series or a property that's been in the works for a very long time, trying to get made. And that is Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerra's Why the Last Man. It exists. It has episodes that you can watch. This is something that has been just, promised for such a long time. I think ever since the original series first came out. So it is running on Hulu in the US, FX on Hulu, which is their sort of like sub brand of original content owned by Disney. But it just dropped the first 3 episodes all at once on Monday. And I think they did a pretty good job. There's some mixed reviews out there, obviously. So, mileage may vary in your experience, but I think that first episode, setting everything up, introducing to all the main characters that we're going to be encountering early on, and then of course showing the big death, happening is, man. I mean that's tough to watch. It is very tough to watch that part in a good way. I think that it was done extremely well, and you do have that building fear and that building tension all through that first episode that takes place sort of right before everything goes to shit for anyone with a Y chromosome. I do also really like the fact that this time around they are focusing on men who do not have Y chromosomes. So trans men are now characters, are part of the story, which they really weren't when BKV was writing it. He didn't really bring anything up, but obviously it is something that needs to be addressed. And
and apparently that was BKV's intervention when he did the Bible for this series. That he wanted that addition. He and Pia are both producers on the show.
So they have a lot of input, which is excellent. Or at least I hope they have a lot of input on it. And there's some really great new characters that have been added that I think enhance the dynamic of the plot lines. So the plot lines are presumably going to be very similar to the original comic series, but with these new characters, they're kind of going in interesting directions. So I recommend Why the Last Man.
Yeah, I have not sat down for it. I have to be in the
Me
right
either.
frame of mind for anything post-apocalyptic, and
It's tough.
yeah, so I
I'm so
have
the
to
same,
be.
Bill.
Yeah, and that's
Especially
like
now.
anything. That's like Planet of the Apes. That's like anything. I have to be in the right
Yeah.
line to sample it. And as you said, David, especially now because
because we're living in
Yeah.
something very similar.
Even the first episode of Sweet Tooth was that anxiety.
Yeah, that was
So, and that's almost just a backdrop, for for the story he's telling. So
it's a little too close.
I will
when you're like, oh,
get
I
to it.
recognize that.
And after the 3-episode drop, it's weekly from that point on, right?
One per week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, over to David. David, tell us if you have a woof of the week.
I do have one, and like Steve, it is a television show. I wonder how many people are actually watching this show. It surprises me that it got to a 3rd season because it feels like it's not been marketed very heavily. But it's a show called Britannia, and I think it's on Sky Atlantic. Here it's on a streaming service called Binge, but yeah, it's set during the second Roman invasion of Britain, and it's got this Lord of the Rings meets Game of Thrones meets Rome, and it's got some fantastic, hallmark British actors and it's this weird fantasy story that's got modern music set to it for some reason, and it's quirky and it just works, and I don't know why. And all of the magic is kind of very low magic, veiled as mysticism. There's not a whole lot of hand waving, really. It's all people, eating strange things and then going into trances and some weird psychedelic visions. And yeah, I love it. It's got some offbeat personality, great cast, and it's really fun to watch.
All right, cool.
I
know over
on
here
Amazon
on
Prime
Epix.
here.
Yeah, it's here on Epix first, and then it streams on Amazon Prime because Amazon is a co-producer, I believe, of it.
So.
But I think the broadcast
Sky.
rights here are Epix first. So I want to check that out. That sounds like something that would hit some of my sweet spots. Yeah. Yeah, I just haven't. For my Wolf of the Week, it's going to a web series, and this is a lo-fi web series on YouTube, and this is called A Visual History of Mecha. I'm not the biggest anime fan in the world, but when I do gravitate towards stuff, it tends to be the very early stuff, and this takes a very chronological approach to the evolution of mecha and anime. There's 33 episodes. They're all about 10 minutes long. The guy that puts them out is Professor Otaku, and he has some pretty opinionated stances on certain things, but it's done through a very comedic and not off-putting way.
Really, Bill? Someone called Professor Otaku has some really opinionated perspectives on anime. What?
but it also it covers it naturally dedicates a little more bandwidth to things that had exposure outside of Japan on a grand scale. The time that they gave Go Lion, which was one of the components of the U.S. Voltron, was pretty extensive, and Gundam, given how much notoriety that eventually gained. But it covers basically everything that qualifies as mecha according to Professor Otaku. And seeing some of these really strange the 70s, there's basically they're all the same, but when there is a deviation, it's usually pretty wild. And I really enjoyed it. I'm up to I think 10 episodes, and there's 33 that have been released so far. And for a little palate cleanser after your post-apocalyptic anxiety of Y the Last Man or whatever, it's nice to see that in comic form and in animated form. So the visual history of mecha on YouTube from Professor Otaku.
Excellent. So I'm guessing there's a lot of Gundam that's mentioned.
Well, I assume after the 79 series they're going to get to it more. I'm just at the point where we're going to hit Macross. So I assume they're going to hit Macross and Most Pieta and all that stuff.
Cool.
That fed into Robotech, and also some interesting things like some of the Micronauts designs were from a real failed series. Like they yanked it before they even had all the animation, and it was supposed to run for like 42 episodes, and they cut it at 26 or something.
We had,
there we go.
Brian Pitters joined us, and
Is he
his
saying
response is
hello?
Sugoi! No,
Which
he's
is
saying great.
Great. Okay.
Sugoi.
Hi, Brian. Glad to see
Hey,
you.
Brian.
So,
thank you for joining us at the end here.
yeah.
Yay.
Well, David, you did get all of us. You did get all of us with Caleb's little.
Yes, yeah, we were all on.
You had all of us there. So that's pretty cool. David,
awesome.
again, thank you so much. Best of luck with everything with Nottingham second volume and all the other projects you have coming. And when you do have the green flag to talk about them, please come back. We'd really appreciate it.
I love hanging out with you guys anytime.
Awesome. So we're wrapping this one up. Again, we're the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, please download us through iTunes, catch us through Stitcher Radio, or many of the other podcasting platforms. If you've joined us through Facebook Live, we really appreciate it. And continuing in and feeding to the visual aspect of this, if you are watching us on YouTube, please leave a positive review and please subscribe. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof, kaboom. Bye.
I got an itch.